Hello everyone, Johnny Hurricane here from GamersHeroes.com, and why don't you sit back, relax, and let me tell you about Dead Cells. Dead Cells is a Metroidvania roguelite that recently left early access and is now out on everything. It was just on PC before, now it's on Switch, now it's on Xbox, now it's on PlayStation, everything. Gotta admit, my experience with Metroidvanias is very limited. Never got into like Symphony of the Night, any of the other Castlevanias, anything like that. Last year, however, I did get into Hollow Knight pretty heavily, so I decided, why not give this one a shot? Plus, it had tons of glowing reviews, and it was recommended to me by more than one person. As of doing this preview, I'd say I've got about 7-8 hours in it. It's one of those games, and I realized this almost immediately. You just think, one more run, and then the sun's coming up, and then you're like, ah crap, completely ruined my schedule. Now, the core of Dead Cells is an action platformer with some RPG mechanics mixed in, commonly known as the Metroidvania. For those of you that don't understand that, basically the old Metroid games were 2D side-scrollers with some platforming and some challenge, so that's why it's known as the Metroidvania, Metroid plus Castlevania. When you enter the game, you actually are a ball of slime, and once you roll into a human corpse and become a humanoid, you can move and start fighting. At the beginning of the game, you actually have a pretty limited selection of weapons. You have a sword, and you can take either a bow or a shield. I think the bow's better than the shield, but some people who know how to parry well might enjoy the shield more. Personally, I think the dodge roll is enough. As you progress, you will find blueprints, and with these blueprints, you can craft new weapons. When you find these new weapons, you will eventually unlock the ability to start with a random weapon as opposed to this broken, rusted blade. So instead of that, you may start with a blood sword or a hammer, depending on what you have unlocked. It is random, so you might not like what you get. To unlock the blueprints, you will need what are known as cells. These are little orbs that you can find off of enemies, and sometimes in chests. It's pretty rare though. If you die, that's it, they're gone. However, if you make it to the end of the level and enter through the exit, then you will make it to your base. And when you're at your base, you can spend your cells. You actually have to spend all your cells. You cannot leave with any cells in your inventory. Now, that might sound like, oh, but what if I don't want to spend them all? Trust me, you do. And whenever you spend them into, they will remain there. So next time you come back with more cells, you can finish unlocking the item or put them somewhere else. Now, this is where the roguelike elements come into it. When you die, you do lose your cells, you do lose your blueprints, and you do lose whatever stats you have achieved. Now, stats you can find again. Blueprints, find again. When you lose your cells, when you die, you cannot get them back. It's not like Dark Souls. You can't go retrieve your cells after you die if you find your corpse. They are gone. So you have to be careful. Now this is kind of a balance thing here. Do you want to explore more and potentially get more cells, or do you just want to go back to base and that's it? You just turn everything in. Risk versus reward. It's ultimately up to you. I can already hear people being like, ugh, I hate this type of mechanic. And honestly, I'm pretty wary of these type of mechanics myself, but I honestly felt like this game was very balanced about it. As long as you make it to the base, you're fine. You don't have to fight every enemy. You can just roll through them and get to the end. As long as you know where you're going, it's not actually that difficult. But again, if you get greedy, which admittedly I have done more than once, you're most likely going to lose more cells than you would have gained just by leaving. I also don't want people to assume based on what I'm saying that the game is too easy. It is certainly challenging, and if you don't think so, well, there's plenty of bosses that are going to stomp you into the dust. Now I'll be the first to admit that the combat can get a bit hectic at times. Sometimes there's a lot of enemies on the screens and they're throwing bombs, they're throwing moves, they're swinging their swords, all while you're doing the exact same thing. There's a lot of explosions and a lot going on. Sometimes you might lose track of your character. But so far, I haven't run into any frame drops or anything like that, even though there's a lot going on the screen, which is good, because if it slows down even a little bit, well, you're probably going to get hit. The best way to survive the game is the dodge roll. That is something you want to master almost immediately. You can dodge nearly any attack, and it is the key to beating bosses. If you don't know how to do that, you can learn the shield and learn the parry. I just don't really like the timing on it. The dodge roll is always going to be there, and it doesn't take up one of your weapon slots. Speaking of weapon slots, there are quite a few different weapons to play around with. You've got your fast weapons like your fast swords and your fast daggers. You've also got spears, you've got hammers, great swords. different varieties for different people. I know some people prefer the slow, strong stun damage. I personally prefer the speed, so I generally go with a sword and like a kunai or a bow, but I've also used the hammer before, and yeah, that thing smashes fools. I'm always the type of person who likes to experiment with different weapons. That's why I really enjoyed Breath of the Wild. I know people didn't like the repair mechanic, but hey, you know what? We're not going to get into that right here. What we are going to talk about is the random weapons that you get at the beginning of the game. If you don't like hammers or greatswords and you get one of those, well, you're going to be off-put just because you have one of those weapons. However, if you get a dagger or something, you know, that's a speed weapon, so you're going to enjoy that. I really do recommend learning all the weapons, because when legendary weapons drop, they might not be the type you like. But it's a legendary weapon. Can you really pass it up? Like I said, I've been 6-7-ish hours into the game so far. You are in a castle, so you do get that castle aesthetic pretty much throughout the entirety of the game. The idea is to climb up, and as you climb higher, you face more and more bosses. Now, there are things underneath as well, but the idea is get to the top of the castle, top of the tower, and get out. Each new area that you enter will have some of the old enemies and some new enemies as well, meaning you'll have to change up your tactics, and you'll also have to figure out what they're going to do to you. Just because rolling behind an enemy and hitting them worked in the level before doesn't necessarily mean it will work in the next level. Sometimes enemies have defenses on their back, and if you hit them on the back, you actually get injured, so you have to fight them in the front. And that really is one of my favorite things about Dead Cells. You are always kept on your toes. You're never like, this is just too easy. If you think it's too easy, you start getting mauled, and then it's all over. You really do have to be on edge pretty consistently, especially when you enter a new area. Like I said, it is a very challenging experience, but also very fair. And from what I've played so far, I've got to recommend it. If you like roguelikes, if you like Metroidvanias, if you like what you're seeing, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't pick it up. Like I said, it's on everything. I don't know how it performs on the Switch. I would probably search that before picking it up on the Switch, just because, well, I love the Switch, but we all know it's a little underpowered. Anyways, that is going to do it for me. I hope you liked what you saw, and if you did, please check back soon for our full review of Dead Cells. Also, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Later, Gators.